Here, and we are looking forward to hearing about the light of service. Okay. Let me get this out of the way. Thank you so much. Sure. You have the magic finger. Yeah. Okay, good morning, everyone. As she said, I'm Reverend Bonnie, the community spiritual leader at the center, and I'm so grateful to be able to speak to you all this morning, see you all, and to be a part of this service as well. So if you don't understand everything I say or you want to hear it again, stick around for the next service. Anyway, I have a question for you. When you see somebody with a turban, how do you feel? If you were sitting on an airplane and someone with a turban came on the plane, would you have a response or a reaction? What thoughts would go through your head?
I'm curious about where they might be from, what their stories about.
Often what we don't know or what we don't understand can scare us. So look at these guys. That's actually my brother and his wife. And that was at my ordination when I was blessed to have him speak. But this is how they look when they go out into public. And my brother is probably one of the sweetest guys that I know, and his wife is a very sweet woman too. And they are Sikhs. So last week at the center, we had Reverend Daiho Hilbert speak to us from the Zen Buddhist perspective. And this month we're focusing on different ways that the light is brought into the world through different teachings. And so that's why Tanya asked me to speak about the Sikh, because that's the tradition I was going to speak to today. And what Reverend Harvey Hilbert told us last week is how important it is to recognize that enlightenment is not something we attain out there, but that we already have the light within us. And as we sit and do the meditation and the work on the cushion, as he put it, we clear what's blocking our light so we can take that light out into the world. So he said it's important to sit on the cushion and then get off the cushion and go out into the world. And what I know about the Sikhs from observing my brother now for many years as a practicing Sikh and his community is that these people do the work, they sit in meditation, and then they take that amazing light out into the world. They're amazing examples to me of light in service. But I want to back up first and give you a little history about the Sikhs before I talk to you about what they teach. And when I say a little, I mean a very brief history. Like most things, people's history, especially one that's been around for centuries, this is many hundred years old, this teaching, I can only speak to a tiny portion of it. So the Sikhs originated in India. So to fully understand the Sikh tradition, you really have to understand Indian history as well. You also need to understand the development of Hinduism, what the caste system in India is all about, and also the influence of Buddhism, Jainism, both of which oppose the caste system in India, the tensions that arose from that, the British who came into India around 1585. They founded the East India Company September 24th, 1599, and by the 19th century ruled a large part of India. I have this book here, The Sikhs by Patwan Singh, and in here the author says that he believed a large reason why Britain was able to come in and take over so much and so easily, in quotes, is because of the tension that was already present between the people around this idea of the caste system and the different religions that were sprouting or coming into influence. And so that tension and that instability created by it allowed Britain to come in and take over, essentially. So the crown took over in 1858. Now the Sikh tradition actually started in 1469, and it was started by Guru Nanak, the first person to bring this teaching into the Punjab area of India. And then 10 gurus later, on March 30th, 1699, Gobind Singh baptized 5 Sikhs from different traditions and created what he called the Brotherhood of the Khalsa. And Khalsa means the pure one. And all the Sikhs now have the last name Khalsa. These were the first 5 Sikhs, is the way they refer to it in this book. I'm backing up so I can see my notes better. So that is like a real short and condensed version of what was going on as the development of the Sikhs took place. But what I think is really important is to understand that the Sikhs came up out of this backdrop of a caste system. Now, if you don't know what the caste system is, it's a real strict understanding of people being part of a hierarchy, essentially. And those at the top, the Brahmins, actually didn't have to pay taxes. Everybody down below did pay taxes. And the very bottom were considered untouchable. People that were really outcast and did the jobs that nobody else would want to do. So this teaching of the Sikhs was developed in response to this. So the cornerstone, or the very basis of the Sikh tradition, is the number 1. This is the first character in the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the Sikh scripture, and it is the cornerstone of everything that they believe. 1 talks to the oneness of the world, the connectedness of reality, the intermingling of the Creator with creation. This logic, this thinking, leads to the concept of divinity that connects all that exists. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? In the Sikh view, divinity permeates every aspect of the world. And the example he gave in here is, think about all the atoms. Atoms are in everything that we know and see. And divinity is within every single atom. And that's the way they see the divine moving in and through all things. Therefore, nothing is inherently profane or evil. So that's the basis, this idea of oneness. And out of that then comes a belief that there is no caste system according to God, that everyone that is created is equal. And so they have a belief in absolute equality. I liked that term, a principle of absolute equality. The vision is that the divine interconnectedness extends to view of all people as divine. The idea of a divine presence is central to the Sikh principle, this principle of absolute equality. And I wanted to point out that the author of the history book that I read says this: any faith that believes in equality among human beings and sees God in each of them is an intrusion or an assault to those who constitute the caste hierarchy. Such intruders have to be removed, as Buddhism. They worked to remove Buddhism when it came in and opposed the caste system. The Sikhs and their beliefs, which threatened the Brahmin supremacy by rejecting this idea of the caste system, also fell into this category. So unfortunately, like a lot of histories, within what they experienced, there's a lot of wars, a lot of trying to defend what they believed and bring that forward in the midst of this teaching and what they believed in. And so this absolute equality also included women. Guru Nanak in the 1400s saw women as equal to men. And this again was in the backdrop of a culture where women would throw themselves on the pyre of their husband when he passed and he was being cremated because they believed they were worth nothing at that point once their husband had passed. So this teaching was also to make women understand that they are equal as well, and for men to recognize that. And so I thought that also was very interesting. And what this author, this is an article that I found that addressed exactly what I wanted to speak to today. It's called Why Sikhs Serve, the Tradition of Seva as Justice Inspired by Love. Here he says that the gurus were not shy about social and political critique, particularly when it focused on issues related to discrimination and inequalities. That they reject poverty, they reject the caste hierarchies, and established an institution called Langar, where all people sit together as equals and are served food. And so today, if you go to a Gurdwara, which is what they call the place that they gather for their religious celebrations and as a community, and there's a Gurdwara in Espanola. If you go there, there's always food being cooked in the kitchen, vegetarian food, and they will serve anyone who comes in and wants to eat. They see all as equal. So this notion of oneness allows us, he says, to celebrate diversity while being inclusive and intersectional, to see our own lives as intersecting and being bound up with people we do not know and may have never met. This is what compels Sikhs to do what is right, whether it's rallying for radical justice or creating communal food banks. It is in this spirit of authentic generosity that Seva has become the signature of Sikhs all over the world. And so the Yogi Bhajan said, I believe that so long as those born of woman do not respect women, there shall not be peace on earth. I got an amen for that one. So who's the Yogi Bhajan? Well, Yogi Bhajan is the man who brought the Sikh tradition from India here to the United States. He came to Los Angeles in 1969, and he created a foundation called the 3HO. And the 3 H's stood for happy, healthy, and holy. And he called it 3HO, the 3 Happy, Healthy, Holy Organization. So some of you might have seen yogi tea that you can buy in the health food stores. That's out of their organization. There's also been cereals, the Khalsa cereals were created from this organization. Anyway, he brought Kundalini yoga and vegetarianism into Los Angeles in the late 60s as an alternative to the drug culture. And the people that were attracted to him and who were learning from him eventually said, we want what you have. In other words, they wanted more than yoga. They wanted more than vegetarian food. They wanted to understand what made him who he was, what he believed, what his spirituality was all about. So he began teaching them about the Sikh teachings and traditions, and that's how the movement in this country came to be, was through Yogi Bhajan and his teaching people, starting in LA, but it's spread all over this country. And again, he's teaching these same principles. There's one God. That divinity and that oneness moves in and through all people and in absolute equality. And so I have a reading. Let's see here, let me grab it. Ernest Holmes, as you know, and the Fillmores taught the same thing. Ernest Holmes said, God is omnipresent. His mind has gone out into all persons. God is right where I am. He said, that is why the mystic said, lift the stone, and you will find me. Cleave the wood, for there I am. God is over all, in all, and through all. There is one God. He said, there are many different religions, but there's only one God. And then I love this, he said, he's known for saying, I thank the God that is, that the God that is, that the God that is usually believed in isn't. And he also said in the Science of Mind text, God is in all and through all, and that's how metaphysics is able to work. So again, this teaching, we call it New Thought, but it's been around for quite some time, and we have some other things in common with the Sikhs as well. They teach gratitude, which is what we were focused on last month, the importance of gratitude, and also the fact that our words and our thoughts impact how healing takes place in our bodies. Another book that I referenced is Kundalini Yoga, The Flow of Eternal Power. There are lots of books that you can get. This was written by Shakti Parwakar Khalsa. It's an easy guide to the yoga of awareness as taught by Yogi Bhajan. And in here she tells a story of how one cold day she made herself a cup of tea and realized that her feet were still cold. The Sikhs will take their shoes off when they enter their home or their gurdwara. And so she decided to go get a pair of socks, and she put her tea on the floor, went to get the socks on, and came back. Forgetting the cup of tea was on the floor, she stepped right into the boiling hot tea, which got into the socks, so her foot was pretty severely burned. She called the Yogi Bhajan, she says, hoping he'd sympathize with her, and instead he said, I'll send you over somebody who will take care of it. The person came over, got her comfortable. She said she was afraid she wouldn't sleep through the night, but she did. And when she woke up in the morning, her skin was perfectly fine. There was no redness, no soreness. So she got on the phone to her mother. Mom, guess what happened? Told her all about what happened. Said, I just can't believe it. Then she called 4 other friends, told them the story. I just can't believe it. She said by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, her foot couldn't believe it either. She said at that point, the redness came back, the swelling came back, and she had to wait the 2 weeks that it would take to naturally heal. And so from that, she said she learned the power of her word and the power of her thoughts. And so she said later, when she got hurt by falling, and she had been teaching this for a while and had deepened in her understanding, she said when the pain would come, she would say, "Thank you, God. I accept your wonderful gift of pain." And the pain would lift immediately. And so her conclusion to these stories is gratefully accepting everything that comes to us as a gift of God involves a remarkably dynamic response from God. An attitude of gratitude invites and allows the power of God to work faster and easier to bless and heal us. So again, this is part of the Sikh teaching. So it feels, I believe, very familiar to us, this idea of our thoughts, our words, and what heals and what can impede that healing. So part of what Sikhs use to help them move into a positive mindset, to shift out of negative thinking into positive thinking, are mantras. And often the mantras are said in Sanskrit or in Gurumukhi, which is the original Sikh language, an ancient Sikh language. So one of those mantras, one of the more common ones, is Sat Nam. And Sat Nam is used as a greeting, like as you say hello, and it's a salutation when you say goodbye, Sat Nam. It's similar, I found, to how we are used to seeing Namaste used. Sat Nam refers to Sat as truth and Nam as name or identity. And there are lots of different ways that this is interpreted then into English. As with interpretation, there's often many ways to interpret a phrase from another language into the one that we're wanting to interpret it to. So Sat, truth, Nam, name or identity, is translated as I am truth. Truth is my essence. Truth is your identity. God's name is truth. Now notice the object that we're talking about as being truth. I am, you are, God is. It's all one. So it can be translated any one of those ways, Sat Nam. And they use this as a meditation also, breathing in Sat and out Nam. And you can do that anywhere, Sat Nam, to remind yourself of the truth of who you are, and to remember and reconnect with that truth. I found that Charles Fillmore said in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, the true church is not made of creeds and forms, nor is it contained in walls of wood and stone. The heart of man is its temple, and the spirit of truth is the one guide into all truth. So again, in unity teaching as well as religious science and New Thought in general, that truth is within us. We are that temple, so to speak, as we take that truth out. So there's a lot of ways that we have similarities to the teachings that the Sikhs have. But there's one more principle that I want to focus on today, because again, there's lots of books if you want to read more, there's lots of information out there. But this is a principle that I think is really important for this time of year. And it's called the tradition of Seva, why the Sikhs serve. And so what can we learn from them about service or Seva at this time of year? Well, I wanted to note, first of all, that Seva, or their idea around service, again, is rooted in that principle of oneness, God being in everything, and equality. And so I re-emphasize that because these are things we believe in, and I am fascinated to see how the Sikhs take these beliefs and activate them in their lives and what they do in the name of Seva, in the name of oneness and connectedness with all. So this is referred to as service with intention, or service, selfless service. And so what does that mean? And how is service with intention different than just any service? Or they talked about justice, acting for justice, activism, all of those terms can be sort of interwoven here. And how are they different when it's Seva, when it's coming from a place of a different sort of intention. So again, out of this article, he talks about how this works. And so if you'll, I'm pointing at the thing with my magic finger. This is a picture that's in the article. Rohingya refugees escaping violent persecution and crossing the border from Myanmar to Bangladesh are being met by Sikh volunteers, providing free food, water, and shelter. So are Syrian and Iraqi refugees, many of whom are abandoning their war-torn countries by foot and encountering free bakeries set up and operated by Sikhs. Despite only making up a small percentage of the global population, Sikhs continue to serve at the forefront of humanitarian crises, from hurricanes and tsunamis to floods and terrorist attacks. So why is this so? Their altruism comes from this tradition, Seva, the practice of justice work that is at the core of the Sikh tradition. I think that's a beautiful picture given what it is. You know, the presence of somebody there to greet you. Can you imagine how that would feel? And when I heard about the free bakeries too, this is a little bit of an aside, but years ago, we had a contingent of people from the religious science community who went to the World Organization of Religions, or Gathering of Religions, that takes place every few years. And they said the Sikhs just put up a tent and started feeding people. That's what they do. They just start feeding people. That's their idea. Again, it comes out of service. And so one of the things that they say in this article is that the Sikh life is to go beyond an egocentric way of seeing the world and to realize the oneness of everyone in the world. And from this, they form a deep love that is joyful, self-effacing, and all-consuming. And this notion of love, then, is the end goal. A Sikh aims to live with love through a daily practice of experiencing love and oneness within one's own life. Service, then, for the Sikhs becomes a way to express love. Service is prayerful action, and service is worship manifest. So he explains in here then the difference between service as it's being done by a Sikh and regular activism as we think about it. And he says activism is about the action itself, whereas Seva takes into account the motivation as well as the action. In the Sikh tradition, it's not the action alone that constitutes Seva. Intention is just as important. True service is motivated by love. So again, they're moving into service from sitting on the cushion, so to speak, connecting with love, connecting with the idea of oneness, and moving from there. It's not fighting against, it's not judging out there, it's moving from a sense of love and connection and oneness. My brother has written several books as well, and the latest one is called Divine Relationships, Two Bodies, One Soul. It's by his wife and him together, Namkar Khalsa and Siriatma Singh Khalsa. And in the introduction, the way he introduces this entire book speaks also to this idea of connecting through love. A relationship is an exchange between two or more objects. A divine relationship, then, is a divine exchange between two people. It is formed out of my thoughts, and more importantly, my intention. There can be no merger without purity of intention. Purity of intention involves service, authenticity, and the joy of belonging or merging with something greater than the individual self. Service doesn't mean running around doing things for others. It means allowing others to take what they need from you. Service stands at the base of divine relationship. Your fulfillment comes from enjoying the purity of your own intent, and this is the key, and the peace that occurs when someone finds their completion in your presence. Isn't that beautiful? What a way to think about it. The peace comes from someone finding their completion in your presence. As you serve in this way, you become one with yourself and your partner. You merge into a divine grace. Satnam Siri Atma Singh. And so I again was thinking about this in light of what we teach here in New Thought, and I found that Charles Fillmore said in the 12 Powers of Man, right here and right now, the great work of character building is to be done. And whoever neglects present opportunities, looking forward to a future in heaven with better conditions, is pulling right away from the kingdom of heaven within him or herself. So what he's saying there is if there are present opportunities right here that need attending to, and we go, we're aiming for heaven, everything will be better then, and we don't take care of what's here, we're not creating that heaven that's already possible within us. And so what I see Seva as being is taking those present opportunities and meeting them in whatever way we can, whatever way we are being called to do so as we sit on our cushion and do our own meditation. And we do that from that essence and that feeling of oneness and that desire to express love in the world, allowing the other to find their completion in our presence. I just think that's a beautiful concept. So one of the questions then is, do we lose ourself? What happens in terms of taking care of ourselves? And this article also addresses that. And yes, he said self-effacing was one of the definitions, but he also pointed out in here that if we see ourselves as one with all that is created, we are also God expressing. So self-care and care of others is one and the same. And we have to do our own spiritual work. We have to take care of ourselves in order to take care of others and to have that place from which to take our love into the world. I just dropped the magic finger. In the November Science of Mind magazine, the very, very last article on the way back, Spirit in Action talks about taking yoga into the prisons. And in here he says there's a critic who says to him, why are you taking this privilege, this luxury of yoga into the prisons? And the person who's doing it says, it's not a luxury, it is essential. Self-compassion leads to the empathy necessary for living with others. And so as we take things like yoga, like meditation, like the things that we teach, as we help others learn to connect to their own true self in those ways, we're developing their self-compassion, which then develops their ability to interact in the world. And so I agree with him. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's something that will help us to increase the amazing ways that people can interact in the world. So, if I can turn my pages. Another Sikh quote, this is again from Guru Nanak, the very first Sikh, the founder. He who has no faith in himself can never have faith in God. He who has no faith in himself can never have faith in God. Again, the oneness, ourself and God. So self-care, faith in ourself, doing that spiritual work. So the Sikh idea of Seva joins that spiritual practice with the view of justice and what is bringing that justice into the world. It's cultivating your personal spirituality while serving the community around you and the people around you. And it's always rooted in love and connectedness. And one of the things he points out in this article is that the Sikhs don't pretend to think that they're the only ones that have a corner on this market. They understand that we all can practice Seva. And they are very happy if anyone wants what they have and copies or exemplifies themselves after the way they move in the world and take Seva out into the world. Like us, they don't proselytize. They totally believe that if someone is drawn to what they teach, they will come. They don't go out there and tell people that they have to be saved. They just go out with Seva, and people end up wanting what they have. So how can we practice Seva at this time of year when we think about gift giving? It's the time of year for giving, the holy days for many different traditions. If you think about that gift being something that you serve with intention, rooted in the idea of oneness, with the intent of love, it is gifts of service without ego attached. Consider, instead of store-bought gifts, ways to give gifts of seva. In my family over the years, we've done things like made coupons, and the coupon would be for some sort of service that we could do for that other person. Anything, and I believe gifts of service can be big or small. They can be things like, I'll fix you breakfast in bed, to I'll walk the dog for you, or I'll do whatever chore is yours so you can have the time off. When my son was little, we would go visit his grandparents in Payson, Arizona, and they did not want any more stuff. So what they had for us was a list of things that needed to be done around the house, and we would include him. We'd be hammering nails in the porch that had started to pop out, putting on fresh coats of paint, trimming back the bushes, whatever they needed. To me, those are gifts of seva. When we're being of service, out of a sense of love and connectedness, and it's better than the stuff. It's the things that people are going to remember. Currently, my stepmother and father also don't want any more stuff, and they don't want to give any more stuff to anyone. So the way they've chosen to give is on Giving Tuesday, which was last Tuesday. They will make donations in the name of each one of us in the family so that those donations are doubled or tripled by the other people giving at the same time. And that, to me, also is an example of a gift of seva. That gift is going beyond just us, but it's done in our name. And so I also thought, if you think back in your life, was there someone who mentored you? Was there someone who believed in you at some point when you really needed to be believed in? Was there someone that helped you through a rough time? Maybe you made a few bad decisions and this person stood by you and helped you get through it and get to the other side. Was there someone who just sat with you in a difficult time? Those are the kinds of gifts I believe we remember more than anything we've ever unwrapped. And those are the kind of gifts that we can pay forward. So think about who you can mentor, who you can spend time with, who you can just sit with, who might need you to sit with them and pray, either out loud or in your own mind. You can also give the gift of forgiveness, forgiving a debt or a behavior. And I also think that gift of telling the truth lovingly, gently, and with respect. And when we talk about that kind of truth, we're talking about that truth that is kind and true and needed. We talk about, but being truthful with someone can be a gift as long as it's done out of that loving space and with the intention of connection and love. And then those larger gifts of seva out into the community through standing by someone or for someone, especially someone who is maybe not being treated equally or given equal respect. In this article, he talks about what has happened since Muslims and turbans have become equated with terrorism. And so again, the Sikhs have been the targets of a lot of people's hate and prejudice in this country because they're mistaken for being Muslim. And he points out that they could go, wait, that's not us, it's them over there. Take all that hate and all that stuff and pile it on them. But the Sikhs don't do that. The Sikhs have chosen to stand by their Muslim brothers and sisters because they know they are one. And he said, even when it could jeopardize their own life, they have chosen to stand with their Muslim brothers and sisters. They go to the mosque and they stand there and protect them when there's a chance that there's going to be violence or an uprising. They stand next to them whenever needed because, again, they see God in everyone. So that is a way of expressing seva. And we know about these examples throughout all kinds of different places. Allies, we refer to them as allies. Straight people who stand by gay people who are still striving to be able to walk equally in this community and maybe not experience violence of some sort. The Gentile who protected and stood by the Jew and still does. Men who supported women in gaining suffrage and still stand by women and experience inequality in this society. White people and Caucasians who explore their own issues and stand by people of color. All of that done out of love and a belief in oneness, rooted with that intention of connecting and bringing about a world that we choose and want to live in. So this is action and service rooted in love. So one of the things that we teach in the New Thought traditions, and a principle that we often talk about, involves service, and that is the idea of tithing our time, talent, and treasure. And if you think about it, when you tithe your time, when you're giving your time to someone, whether it's in prayer, in listening, being available to them when they need something, when you are doing this, you are providing a service, a very necessary and loving service. And when you tithe your talents, again, this is taking what you have skills in doing and providing them for somebody else. You're taking and meeting those opportunities that Charles Fillmore was talking about and seeing that they are met. You're standing by people out of love and oneness. And when we tithe our treasure, whether we're giving money or things, whether it's food and shelter or water, as we're doing it from a place of love and connection and oneness, it has a different feel to it when it's being received. Again, another Sikh quote from Guru Nanak: "If people use the wealth bestowed on them by God for themselves alone or for treasuring it, it is like a corpse. But if they decide to share it with others, it becomes sacred food." So our treasure, our time, and our talent, how we can turn that into seva. Now, we might not have a turban that lets people know who we are as we're doing these acts of service, and that's not why they wear the turban. That has a whole other meaning to it. But we can go out there and provide gifts of service, and people might want what we have. And we can let them know that we have our belief also in what we call New Thought, that is expressing an ancient teaching that is found all around the world. And it is especially found in this tradition of Seva that is practiced by the Sikhs. Now, Yogi Bhajan, also known as Harbhajan Singh Khalsa Yogi Ji, became a U.S. citizen in 1976. And this was his bottom line: understand the fact that God is in all, big and small. And his motto: if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. If you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. So I encourage you during this season to give the gift of Seva, not only now, but throughout the entire year. See God in all, and let everyone see the God in you. Let them see that light in you in the form of Seva or service. Satnam, and so it is. And you want me to do a meditation now? Yes? Okay. So let's just go within and consider breathing in Sat and out Nam. You can say it or think it. Sat, Nam. I am the truth. God is truth. Sat, Nam. Just settle into that feeling of oneness with truth. And as you settle into that space of awareness that truth is who you are, see that truth in those around you in this room. Imagine it in those out in our community. And expand it out into all those that you can imagine that are walking this planet. Sat, Nam. Again, breathe in Sat, Nam. Sat, Nam. Rooted in this truth, we let our light shine out into the world, bringing our talent, our time, and our treasure, God expressing.
Sat Nam. And so it is.